hello. And first of all, allow me to wish you a peaceful, meaningful new year. Thank you for choosing to be here in this very special moment when one year has just closed its door and a new journey is quietly waiting ahead. If you are a Sagittarius, and if you are hearing these words right now, then your presence here is not random, not at all. Some people are born to go far, to expand, to live a life that stretches beyond familiar limits. They are not meant for small spaces or narrow paths. And yet, sometimes those very people are forced to endure for far too long inside boundaries that were never meant for them. That kind of endurance leaves a mark, not on the face, but in the breath, in the way you wake up each day, in the quiet weight you carry without ever naming it. If you have ever felt like you tried harder than most, walked farther than you should have had to, yet still found yourself held back, right at the edge of the finish line, then listen closely. Really listen. This is not just a New Year's greeting. This is a wake-up call, because a long cycle is coming to an end, and a truth needs to be spoken. A truth that begins with those very years you thought were nothing but endurance, nothing but survival. For the past 15 years, if there were one image that could describe your life, it would be this: a bow, pulled tight, always under tension. Not for a day, not for a season, but stretched continuously for so long that you almost forgot what it feels like to finally let go. You were never lazy. You never gave up. If anything, you were always ready. Ready to keep going, ready to start again, ready to push just a little farther. And yet, every single time, right at the moment you thought the arrow was about to be released, something unseen held you back. Not loudly, not violently, just a familiar sensation, standing right at the finish line and still not being able to cross it. You never called it exhaustion, because exhaustion has a reason. And you never called it discouragement, because desire never left you. What you felt was something quieter, a long, silent tension, like holding your breath underwater for too long. You knew you needed to surface. But somehow, every time you lifted your head, the water seemed to rise even higher. So you kept swimming, kept trying, kept believing that if you were just a little stronger, a little faster, everything would finally change. Over those 15 years, you began again so many times that you can barely remember what the first beginning even was. You watched money come and go like the wind, not because you didn't know how to hold on to it, but because every time you finally caught your breath, something unexpected appeared and took it all away. You saw projects that seemed ready to bloom collapse without warning, relationships that felt stable enough fall apart for reasons you could never quite name. And there were moments when you wondered quietly if you were doing something wrong, or if, somehow, you were the problem. But deep down, there has always been a clear, steady voice inside you that knew the truth was not that simple. You are not weak. You never were. If you were, you would have stopped a long time ago. The truth is, you have been living beneath an invisible ceiling, a limit you did not create. It's like being born with long legs meant for distance running, yet being told to walk inside a narrow room where every step forward hits a wall. You can adapt, you can adjust, but you cannot escape the feeling of being confined. And the cost of that confinement was not only failure, it was the growing distance between you and yourself. Sagittarius is born to expand, to go far, to look toward the horizon and trust that there is always another road beyond it. You belong to movement, to big questions, to the journey itself. Not to standing still, but for 15 years you were forced to shrink, to live inside spaces far smaller than your soul. That kind of pain is different. It doesn't knock you down all at once. It wears you down slowly, by asking you to suppress who you truly are. Perhaps your deepest pain was never what you lost, but what you were never allowed to become. You learned how to endure, how to stay quiet, how to wait, and yet, you never lost the feeling that you were living off your natural path. But in that misalignment, you gained something rare: depth. The depth of someone who has seen limits, touched the edge of patience, and still kept enough compassion to avoid becoming bitter. If you listen closely now, you may realize that none of those years were wasted. They were like a long pause before music begins, like a dark sky just before dawn finally names its colors. And right now, as you stand inside that quiet space, something subtle is shifting, not with sound, but with sensation. A feeling that the space around you is widening, that the air feels lighter, and that maybe, just maybe, the bow is finally about to be released in the most natural way possible. And then there are moments in life when everything changes, not with thunder, but with silence. One morning, you wake up and your chest doesn't feel as heavy as before. Not exactly relief, just a little less tight, as if the invisible room that has surrounded you for so many years has quietly expanded by a few inches. You can't quite name it yet, but your body feels it before your mind does. Your breath goes deeper, your eyes soften, and somewhere, very deep inside, a cord that has been pulled tight for 15 years is finally beginning to loosen. There is a date you need to remember, not to fear, not to wait for with anxiety, but to understand that time has doors of its own. That date is January 2nd, 2026. At first glance, it sounds ordinary, just another date on the calendar, another early day in a new year. But for you, this day does not carry the energy of a loud beginning. It carries the meaning of a period, a quiet but decisive closing, like finishing a book you have been reading for half your life, closing it gently and setting it down with no desire to open it again. This is not an emotional prediction, and it is not a promise drawn to comfort you. This is the moment when the 15-year cycle you have been carrying on your back is officially complete. The cycle of proving your worth through pain. The cycle of paying a price before you were allowed to hope. The cycle of repeated tests so constant that you began to believe this was simply how life works. From this moment on, the ledger closes. No more effort required to compensate. No more loss required to learn the lesson. Everything has been paid. Everything has been learned. It is enough. What few people ever tell you is that the universe does not operate through punishment forever. It operates through cycles, and the next cycle meant for you stretches across 30 years, not to make you endure again, but to allow you to harvest. And this harvest is not only money, not only visible success, it is the harvest of expansion, of living in rhythm with your natural breath, of allowing life to move outward instead of shrinking inward just to stay safe. After this point, the universe no longer tests you through lack. It no longer takes things away to see how much you can survive. Instead, it steps back, and it watches. It watches to see if you will step forward when you are no longer being pushed, if you will reach out when no one is pulling you back. This is a much subtler test, because it does not strike at pain. It strikes at your belief in what you deserve. And the most important thing to understand is that this shift does not arrive like an explosion. It does not come through one event that flips everything overnight. It arrives quietly, the way light changes before the sun rises. You may not notice it right away, but you will feel yourself responding differently to familiar situations. Things that once kept you awake at night now only make you pause and then pass. Things that once terrified you no longer have the power to make you turn away. You may even be surprised to find yourself trying less, yet moving more smoothly. Not because you have become weaker, but because you are no longer using all of your energy to fight an invisible current. And in that flow, you begin to understand something new. You no longer need to rush forward with wounds, just to prove your strength. Your strength now lives in knowing when to step, when to stop, and when to stand still and listen. You may not yet have words for what is happening, but deep inside, a very ancient part of you knows that you have crossed a threshold, not with applause, not with outside recognition, but with a feeling that is unmistakably real. The feeling that the road ahead is no longer an escape, but a companionship. And as that feeling becomes clearer, you begin to see that the doors you once thought did not exist have been there all along. It is only now that you are calm enough to see them. And when the current begins to change direction, it rarely does so with big signs. It whispers first, very softly, like a breeze brushing against your skin. just enough for you to feel it, not quite enough for you to fully trust it yet. Right now, if you look back at what's been happening in your life, you may start to notice small details you once passed by without a second thought. Your dreams feel more vivid, less foggy, less like smoke drifting away. In those dreams, you find yourself walking unfamiliar roads, seeing faces you haven't thought about in years, or standing in front of doors you don't remember ever opening before. And when you wake up, what lingers isn't fear, but a quiet, unplaceable feeling, as if someone gently touched your shoulder and then let go. There are moments in the middle of an ordinary day when someone from your past suddenly enters your mind. Not out of longing, not out of regret. The image simply rises on its own, clear enough to make you pause for a few seconds. And sometimes it isn't only in your thoughts. You might run into them in real life or hear their name spoken in a conversation that has nothing to do with you. These coincidences don't seem meaningful at first, but they leave behind a strange sensation, as if the past is gently knocking on the present, not to pull you back, but to remind you how far you've already traveled. You may also notice certain words reaching you at just the right time, spoken by a stranger, heard on the radio, from a movie you happen to rewatch by chance. Simple words, yet they land directly on what you've been thinking. They stop you, they quiet you, as if they weren't meant for everyone, only for you in that exact moment. And then there are the numbers, the repeating symbols, the small patterns showing up again and again, so subtle that you're not sure whether to believe them or laugh them off. But no matter how you respond, your body notices a slight change in your heartbeat, a gentle vibration right behind the chest. This is not superstition. This is your Sagittarius intuition slowly waking up again after being forced into silence for far too long. Your intuition never disappeared. It was simply covered by noise, the noise of survival, of constant worry, of always staying on guard. When you live in defense mode for too long, you learn to distrust gentle signals because you believe only warnings can keep you safe. But now, as the invisible pressure begins to lift, your intuition finally has space to breathe, to whisper, to remind you that you were never meant to live in constant doubt. The universe is not handing you a gift yet. It isn't rushing. It's doing something far more delicate. It's recalibrating your inner compass. For 15 years, that compass was distorted by fear, by hope, followed by disappointment, again and again, until you were no longer sure which direction you were facing. Now, slowly, the needle is returning to its natural position, not through logic, but through feeling. You begin to sense what makes you contract and what allows you to open. And that awareness is what prepares you for what comes next. Because once the compass is aligned, there will be a very real moment, very specific, very tangible, when a door appears right in front of you, not in a dream, not in imagination, but in everyday life, in the middle of ordinary moments. An offer, a new direction, a possibility you never dared to take seriously before. And in that moment, your old reflex will rise first. The reflex shaped by years of self-protection. A familiar voice speaks up, reasonable, convincing. If it's too good, it won't last. Easy opportunities always come with a hidden cost. The safest choice is not to step out. That voice is not evil. It saved you more than once, but it belongs to another time. This moment does not ask you to fight or to run. It asks you to recognize that you are standing at a new crossroads, where the question is no longer whether you are strong enough to endure more, but whether you trust yourself enough to step forward when no one is pushing you from behind. And in the brief silence before that choice, you will feel the difference more clearly than ever. The difference between past and present, between old reflexes, and a new way of living quietly opening in front of you. And then, in the middle of days that seem completely ordinary, life places something very real right in front of you. No longer a vague sign, no longer a fleeting feeling from a dream, but something you can touch, something you can respond to, something you can choose. An offer spoken in a calm, almost casual tone. A new direction appearing in a conversation that seems random. A door opening right, inside your familiar life. A place you've passed by before, but never dared to stop at for more than a few seconds. No fireworks, no drums, just a quiet, deeply human moment. And because of that, one that is very easy to miss. The instant that moment appears, your old reflex wakes up first. It arrives quickly, comfortably familiar, with the same voice you've heard for 15 years. No way, there must be a catch. If it's that good, it can't be real. That voice isn't cruel. It was born to protect you during years when hope often came with pain. It was shaped by moments when you trusted and lost, opened your heart and were hurt, stepped forward, only to be pulled back again. For a long time, that reflex helped you survive. So you trusted it. You listened to it. You treated it like wisdom. But what you may never have stopped to see is that this reflex belongs to a chapter that is already closed. It was created when you had to live in defense mode, when every step forward carried a cost that felt too high to risk. Now, as that door opens, the old reflex still does its job. It doubts, but doubt is no longer the only guide, because this time, what you feel inside is different. Beneath the familiar fear, there is something else present. A strange calm, a sense of not having to brace yourself, as if your body recognizes something your mind hasn't named yet. This time, it isn't a challenge disguised as opportunity. It isn't a trap wrapped in promises, and it isn't a lesson that demands loss as payment. This time, it is an invitation, a gentle but unmistakable invitation to step out of rules you've lived by for far too long. Rules where you always had to stay alert, always prove yourself, always wait to see what something good might take from you in return. Rules where the first question was always, is this safe? Instead of, does this allow me to live as who I truly am? And maybe, for the first time in many years, the most important question is no longer about safety at all. It becomes, how much longer do you plan to live by the old rules? How much longer will you shrink yourself in front of what could expand you? How much longer will you cling to invisible fences, even as the field in front of you grows wider? Sagittarius was never meant to live in tight spaces, no matter how familiar they feel. You were born to move, to open, to trust a horizon beyond what stands right in front of you. You may not answer right away. You may need a pause. And that pause isn't hesitation. It's the first time you're learning to listen to a different part of yourself. The part that doesn't speak through fear, doesn't shout warnings, but communicates through a quiet vibration. The part that reminds you that if you keep saying no out of fear, you will keep receiving the same life. Safe, familiar, and dim. And if you choose to take one small step beyond the old rules, not recklessly, but consciously, you are not losing yourself. You are allowing yourself to live larger. That door will not remain open forever. Not because the universe is stingy, but because every invitation requires an answer. And in the moment you stand between two breaths, between an old habit and a new possibility, something very important is happening quietly, not outside of you, but within. A subtle shift, where courage no longer means enduring more, but allowing yourself to step into a life that no longer requires constant defense. And from that point on, your story begins to unfold in a different way, lighter, deeper, with enough light to reveal what you've always carried inside you, but never had the chance to use. And when you stand in front of that door long enough, when the old reflexes begin to quiet down, when the noise of doubt no longer drowns out that very real feeling in your chest, you start to realize something important. Not every obstacle comes from the outside. Not every battle has an opponent standing in front of you. Some battles don't require raised fists. They don't require defense. And yet, they are harder than anything you have ever faced. Because this time, you are not facing the world. You are facing yourself. Your greatest enemy is no longer another person, and it is no longer circumstance. Not rejection, not lack, not the unexpected crises that once forced you to be stronger than you should have had to be. Those things have already done their job. What remains, quieter, more persistent, lives inside you. A fear that is subtle and difficult to admit, because it doesn't look like weakness. It looks like reason. It is the fear of losing your freedom if you truly succeed. It sounds contradictory, but Sagittarius understands this better than anyone. You are used to freedom inside small limits, where you don't have to carry too much responsibility, where you don't bear the weight of other people's expectations, where you don't stand at a place where every decision carries long-term consequences. Success, in its own way, asks you to stay, to choose, to build, to care for what you create. And the familiar part of you loves movement. It loves the lightness of knowing you can change direction at any moment. Beneath that fear, there is another one, the fear of being responsible for a life bigger than yourself. When life expands, you no longer live only for you. You affect others. You influence the larger flow. You become part of stories that are no longer simple. That responsibility is quiet, but it has weight. And after many years of surviving by staying light, by carrying as little as possible so you wouldn't be crushed, the idea of a bigger life can feel less like excitement and more like pressure. And deepest of all, there is a fear that is very quiet and very real. The fear that if you truly go far, you won't be able to go back. Back to old versions of yourself. Back to narrow but familiar spaces. Back to the role of someone always searching, always moving, always avoiding stillness. There is a part of you that became attached to the difficult journey, not because it was good, but because it became your identity. You know who you are when you are overcoming, but you have never truly lived in a state where nothing needs to be overcome. Sagittarius is used to the journey, yes, but be honest with yourself. You are used to the hard journey, where every step requires sacrifice, where freedom comes with lack, where you can leave at any time because nothing asks you to stay. The open journey is different. It asks for presence. It asks you not only to travel, but to live fully inside the path you choose. And that is what makes you hesitate. Not because you lack courage, but because you are standing in front of a completely new kind of freedom. And this is the real test. Not between right and wrong, not between winning and losing, but between two very different meanings of freedom. On one side, freedom inside familiar lack, where you are unbound but unsupported, where you can go far but always carry unease. On the other side, freedom inside an abundance you have never known, where you have more but must stand steadier, more aware, and more honest with yourself. No one can choose for you, and there is no signal, no warning sound that announces the decisive moment. It arrives quietly, maybe on a silent evening, when you sit alone and realize you are tired of proving you need nothing. Maybe on an ordinary morning, when you suddenly notice you no longer want to run. And in those very human moments, you understand something essential. The final enemy does not need to be defeated. It only needs to be seen. Because when you dare to look at this fear directly, without avoiding it, without judging it, you realize that behind it is not the loss of freedom, but a deeper kind of freedom. One where you no longer have to run from your own life. And when you look at that fear long enough, when you stop trying to push it away, stop trying to explain it, something unexpected happens. The fear doesn't grow the way you thought it would. It quiets, like a cloud when the wind disappears. And in that stillness, you suddenly realize something important. January 2nd, 2026 does not arrive to turn you into someone else. It doesn't ask you to shed your skin. It doesn't demand that you learn how to live against your own nature. It simply, gently returns you to who you were before you had to shrink yourself just to survive. Some changes don't need noise. They don't need announcements. They don't need approval from the outside world. They happen the way light shifts in a room when the sun moves to a different angle. Everything is still there, but the way you see it has changed. From that moment on, money no longer stands between you and freedom like a barrier. It becomes a tool, like a good pair of shoes on a long road. Not something you use to prove your worth. Not a chain that forces you to chase what you don't believe in. You use it to go farther, not to run away. The people who enter your life begin to change as well. No more relationships built on need, on temporary gain, on shared lack. The ones who remain resonate with you on a deeper level. They don't require you to tense up to prove your strength. They don't try to take from you. They don't test you through uncertainty. Their presence is gentle, clear, real enough that you don't need to stay guarded. You no longer keep distance to protect yourself. You only need to be yourself. Life, from that point forward, no longer opens vertically through winning and losing, higher and lower, more and less. It opens horizontally, true to the nature of Sagittarius, wider, farther, with more choices. You are no longer forced to climb a specific peak just to prove something. You are allowed to go, allowed to explore, allowed to live inside abundance of experience without carrying guilt or fear. Freedom is no longer escaping responsibility. It becomes choosing responsibility that fits your soul. And within all of this, the final message is so simple, you might miss it if you don't listen closely. You don't need to fight anymore. You don't need to strain yourself to push through. You don't need to prove that you are strong enough to endure more. You've already done that for 15 years. You survived. You learned enough. Now, the only invitation is to walk forward, a step that isn't defiant, isn't resistant, but accepting. Accepting that you deserve a life that no longer requires constant defense. That step is not loud. No one around you may notice it right away, but you will feel it clearly, like stepping out of a narrow room into open space, where your chest naturally opens, where your breath deepens without effort. You don't need to look back to make sure you've left. You only need to feel that you no longer want to return. The old cycle closes in that way, not with tension, but with release, not with a tearful goodbye, but with the understanding that what has passed has fulfilled its purpose. And when Sagittarius is free in the deepest sense, nothing can pull you backward anymore. Not because you run faster, but because you no longer have any reason to run away. The road ahead does not promise that everything will always be easy, but it does promise that you will no longer have to betray yourself to keep moving. You walk with your head held higher, with trust that is no longer naive, but steady enough to not doubt every good thing. And when you walk this way, the world does not need to change to fit you. You, through your full presence, become the invitation to a life that is wider, brighter, and real enough for you to stay without ever feeling imprisoned.